Hey everyone, this is Emma. Today is Thursday, March 12th, and I'm here with another update about the coronavirus. And today is going to be a little bit different. I didn't actually write a roundup article yet on the Mind Unleashed, so I'm not going to be going through an article like I have in the last few videos. The developments have been coming really fast, as you probably know, and it's been kind of too hard to sift through them and write that kind of article. So I wanted to get a video out right away, and I'm just going to read through a bunch of the headlines that we've been posting on our Telegram channel that I've mentioned before, and kind of add some commentary to that stuff. And then later today, I'm going to figure out a way that we can do a roundup article on the Mind Unleashed that's a lot faster than the previous ones that I was doing, with like less writing, more just like inputting the information from a lot of the sources that we're using. First, I wanted to update everybody on some local information. Here in Minnesota, we have our 9th case confirmed. And I know not every state is seeing this, but one neat thing that is happening here in Minnesota, which is pictured in this article in the Star Tribune, is we have a lot of those drive-in testing stations set up, that, just like we saw in South Korea, that is thought to have helped that South Korea's response by having this really quick ability and free ability to test people. And that is something that we're seeing here in Minnesota. Unfortunately, though, or maybe fortunately, depending on how many tests there are, you have to go through a screening process first prior to being able to have your swabs taken from your vehicle at one of these locations. And personally, I did actually go through that screening process online, because I've been sick off and on since I got back from New York City a couple of weeks ago, and I know some other people that I was at this conference with have also been sick, and some of them have tried to seek out testing as well. And I also just wanted to try the process to see what it was like. It was a really easy, straightforward process. There was a form to fill out online and a lot of questions, but the questions kind of probably are very specific and pin you down into just a very tiny group of who is somebody that's eligible for testing and who isn't. So I ended up getting this message back from them saying that they looked at all of my information, but I did not qualify because I did not travel to one of the countries that has an outbreak. I have not had close contact within 6 feet of somebody who has been diagnosed with the coronavirus disease, and I do not have a fever right now. They did not ask if I had a fever at any point during the presentation of symptoms. They asked if I have a fever right now. So some of those questions are maybe not necessarily helpful. We have not identified community spread yet here in Minnesota, but as we know, that is happening in a lot of places, so that qualifier with traveling is a little bit less important probably. But I do understand if we have limited tests that we don't want everybody to flood in and overwhelm the system right now, so they're probably doing the best that they can, but we'll have to see how that progresses, and hopefully we will see more of these drive-up clinics popping up all over the country. This article also states, though, and this was a little bit disappointing personally as a parent, the University of Minnesota and some other local colleges, including the University of St. Thomas, have decided to cancel all of their in-person classes, and they've moved all of their classes online. But it says right now that state health officials are not considering the cancellation of K through 12 classes at this time. In the next paragraph, they highlight that the virus hasn't been as much of a problem in children, and that school closures can be disruptive, which is true. But there's a lot going on with that, because the virus hasn't been so much of a problem in children, but that doesn't mean that they aren't catching it and they aren't spreading the virus without having symptoms. So there's a lot to weigh here, but my kids are home right now because the teachers are actually on strike this week. So personally, I think that was great timing for that to happen. And I thought I would share with you where I'm currently standing and what my current opinion is. I show you this tweet that I posted earlier this morning. My current train of thought is that we should really just cancel everything, and most of us should stop going to things that are not necessary to attend. Again, this is just my personal opinion, and this is kind of what I am doing, but A lot of people are concerned about the government shutting things down, about the National Guard coming in and imposing a quarantine, whatever it is, whatever those things might turn out to look like. And I'm suggesting that we shouldn't wait for our governments to tell us what to do and make the calls for us. If you are not comfortable going out into the world, going to an event, and if you have a say in whether something should be canceled or not, I think that we should all take it upon ourselves to help stop the spread and cancel things and reduce our time out of the home. Again, this is just my opinion. You can wait for your city or your state or the national government or whatever to tell you what to do with this, but this is just my take. This is an interesting graph here that I've seen. This is from Michigan, but it says adapted from the CDC. I've seen a couple different versions of this. This dotted line here represents how many very sick people hospitals can treat. This is the number of sick people and how quickly it will increase if we do not take steps to slow the spread right now. The yellow is a much more gradual curve, and it doesn't go over that line. If we slow the spread now, we will, it looks like this goes out farther, so we will extend how long there might be sick people, but we will not go over capacity. And once we go over capacity of how many people the hospitals can treat, that's when we run into a lot more problems, because that's when we potentially run into over-exhausting the system, not being able to treat people with coronavirus, having more health professionals become infected themselves, getting overworked, potentially not providing the best care because they are overworked, working nonstop. That's something that we saw happening in China. Just doctors committing hours and hours and hours, completely exhausted, but they couldn't stop. And then if it goes over this line again, we run into people who have different health problems and different health emergencies, potentially not being able to access the care that they need during that time because hospitals are completely overrun. So this is part of why I'm personally suggesting that we reel ourselves in and we slow down on scheduling events and all those kinds of things, and we just plan to postpone some stuff. It's inconvenient. It definitely equates to a loss of money, a major loss of money in some places. It's not easy, it's not nice, but if it can help, I think it's definitely worth it. So let's go over here, and I'm going to refresh. See if there are any new updates. Not yet. Well, New York City has declared a state of emergency to fight COVID-19. Bill de Blasio declared the state of emergency today on Thursday, which allows him to use new powers as the number of confirmed cases rose to 95 in the city. During a press conference today, he said, "The last 24 hours have been very, very sobering. Literally yesterday morning feels like a long time ago." I completely understand what he's feeling there. Of course, I am not in charge of a city myself, but paying attention to this stuff, it's coming so quickly, and when you're completely immersed in it, the timeline is just kind of wacky. The U.S. stock market suffers the worst crash since 1987 amid the pandemic. Stocks cratered on Thursday as the escalating coronavirus pandemic and lingering questions about Trump's response drove the worst day of losses for Wall Street since the 1987 crash. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed with a loss of 2,352 points, dropping 10% for its steepest loss by percentage since falling 22.6% on October 19th, 1987. And again, in this feed on Telegram, we always have a link back to the source if you want to click on that and learn more. We stick in like the little bit of what we think is the most important information here, as well as the title. Maryland's governor has activated the National Guard, closed schools and ports after confirming community spread. 12 people in the state have tested positive for coronavirus, including one community transmission case. Maryland public schools will be closed from March 16th to 27th. Governor Hogan said, "We should expect the number of cases to dramatically rise." Hogan said these drastic measures may concern some residents. All hospitals across the state must follow more restrictive visitor policies. No visitors under the age of 18. They will be screened for illness before visiting, and one adult visitor per patient. All senior activity centers are also closed until further notice. Visits to state prisons have also been halted. Ukraine has imposed a nationwide quarantine as a prevention measure. Ukraine's cabinet of ministers has approved a final plan to fight the spread of COVID-19, which includes a 3-week nationwide quarantine in educational institutions and a ban on the holding of mass events. The NCAA has canceled its March Madness basketball tournaments and all remaining winter and spring championships. Earlier Thursday, major conferences canceled their championship tournaments, and sports organizations across the world rolled out fan restrictions and suspensions of play. California has banned gatherings of 250 people or more, and smaller ones should only happen if people stand 6 feet apart. Governor Gavin Newsom has announced that gatherings of more than 250 people should be canceled. A statement from his office said smaller gatherings can proceed if organizers implement 6 feet of social distancing. That I get a pretty funny picture in my head there. LA County took things a step further by banning gatherings of 50 plus in publicly owned buildings. Slovakia closes borders for non-residents. The country, situated between the Czech Republic, Poland, Hungary, Austria, and Ukraine, will also close international airports, schools, bars, and clubs, and impose mandatory quarantine for anyone returning abroad. New York City has banned gatherings of more than 500 people, Broadway shows included. 37 infectious disease scientists have written a letter to New York City's mayor recommending that social distancing should be actively implemented, not merely recommended. And you can click on this letter to expand it here if you'd like to read it. Minnesota corrections officials have halted prison visits and volunteers. A major Arctic military exercise was canceled over fears of the coronavirus. Norwegian authorities have canceled the remaining portion of a large-scale Arctic exercise dubbed Cold Response over the coronavirus fears. Cold Response kicked off in Norway on March 9th and was slated to run through March 18th. The exercise included roughly 15,000 troops from the U.S., Norway, and 8 other allied countries. Ohio has closed all schools and banned gatherings of more than 100 people. After a man in Trumbull County tested positive for the coronavirus and is now hospitalized, the state also issued new orders on large gatherings. With the closure of schools and banning of 100-person gatherings, Ohio is slowly grinding to a halt as the coronavirus spreads throughout the state. France closes all schools and universities and delays the tax deadline. So there's a lot of news today about schools closing all over the world. This is the first mention that I've seen of delaying a tax deadline, and that's something that I've been wondering about if we're going to see something about like that in the United States, because tax day is quickly approaching, and that is not something that's going to be on everybody's mind, and people who are very affected by the coronavirus may not be able to file their taxes. Of course, you can request an extension for filing your taxes, but if this is going to be a very common thing this tax season, it might be in their better interest to postpone when taxes are due for everybody, but we'll see if something like that happens. The second NBA player has tested positive for the coronavirus. Jazz star Donovan Mitchell tested positive, according to ESPN. Last night, the NBA decided to discontinue the remainder of the season after one player tested positive, so now this is the second. Iranian doctors that are battling the coronavirus on the front lines put out an urgent request for emergency medical supplies. You can click on this image here to take a look at what that request specifically entails. The Foreign Affairs Minister of Iran said Iranian care personnel are courageously battling COVID-19 on front lines. Their efforts are stymied by the vast shortages caused by restrictions on our people's access to medicine and equipment. Most urgent needs are outlined below. Viruses don't discriminate, nor should humankind. He's specifically talking about sanctions that have been imposed on the country, which directly harm the ability of the country to provide medical care. That is a well-documented side effect and oftentimes purposeful effect of sanctions. We have an op-ed here in Newsweek from a doctor at a major hospital in Western Europe. It is titled, "Young and Unafraid of the Coronavirus Pandemic? Good for you. Now stop killing people." The doctor says, "Watching you Americans and you Brits in these still early days of the coronavirus pandemic is like watching a familiar horror movie where the protagonists, yet again, split into pairs or decide to take a tour of a dark basement. The real-life versions of this behavior are pretending this is just a flu, keeping schools open, following through with your holiday travel plans, and going into the office daily. This is what we did in Italy. We were so complacent that even when people with coronavirus symptoms started turning up, we wrote each off as a nasty case of the flu. We kept the economy going, pointed fingers at China, and urged tourists to keep traveling. And the majority of us told ourselves and each other, this isn't so bad. We're young, we're fit, we'll be fine even if we catch it. Fast forward 2 months and we are drowning. Statistically speaking, judging by the curve in China, we are not even at the peak yet, but our fatality rate is at over 6%, double the known global average. The nation's top expert on infectious disease on Thursday said the U.S. needs to admit that it is failing in terms of testing for the coronavirus. He said, that is a failing. It is a failing. Let's admit it. Major League Baseball will suspend all operations and likely delay the start of the 2020 season due to the outbreak, according to ESPN. The Italian death toll has passed 1,000 as the mortality rate hits 6.7%. The coronavirus has claimed 1,016 lives in Italy, officials say, but the foreign minister says he hopes his country will be the first in Europe to get over the emergency. Another 188 people died over 24 hours. Passenger demand has plummeted after the coronavirus pandemic, and Virgin Atlantic is saying that it is being forced to fly almost empty planes, or else they might lose their valuable time slots. This is something that other airlines have also said as well. Norwegian Air Shuttle is suspending thousands of flights and slashing its workforce in response to the fallout of the coronavirus and the widespread travel restrictions. Their chief executive said the situation is unprecedented and called on governments to support the aviation industry. Canada's Trudeau and his wife Sophie are both in self-isolation, awaiting COVID-19 tests. Trudeau's wife began to exhibit flu-like symptoms and is awaiting a test. When I first saw that news pop up this morning, I personally wasn't too happy to see it because the report was that they were self-isolating after she began to exhibit flu-like symptoms and that tests were being done. I'm not sure if news like that is particularly helpful at this time, if it adds to the fear and adds to the panic, especially in Canada, that the leader of your country may be infected. They are awaiting the results of testing, so I'm not sure why you can't just wait until you have that positive or negative, or if it is negative, then don't say anything. Turkey is also closing all schools and university. The Turkish presidency announced on Thursday that schools and universities will be closed on Monday because of the outbreak. Sporting events will be carried out, though without spectators, and public employees will only be able to leave the country with specific permits. Primary and secondary schools will be closed beginning on the 16th of March for a week. After that, the Ministry of Education will continue to teach students through an online platform and TVs for another week. Hackers are using coronavirus maps to infect your computer. Now, this is the map that I have shown you a few times, and I will refresh for the latest numbers. This is the official map that is being managed by the Center for Systems Science and Engineering at Johns Hopkins University. This map is not one of the maps that hackers are trying to use to infect your computer. But if you take a look at that article, it is showing that some of the maps look exactly like that because they're using that map. But if you can't make that bigger, but if you check out the URL right here, that is not the same one as over here, which I can show you. So if you look up here, gisandata.maps.arcgis.com, and then a bunch of other stuff. That is what you've got to look for if you want to make sure you are using the correct map. If you see somebody with a link to a map, just make sure you know what you're clicking on. Do not download something in order to have a map. These are available in browsers. A former CIA officer is asking who made the coronavirus. Was it the US, Israel, or China itself? So you have your choice. Coronavirus occurred naturally, or it came out of a lab in China itself, or even from Israel or the United States. If one suspects Israel and or the United States, the intent clearly would have been to create a biological weapon that would damage two nations that have been designated as enemies, referring to China and Iran there. But the coronavirus cannot be contained easily, and it is clear that many thousands of people will die from it. There are still a lot of different theories on what is going on here with this virus, and Some theories include absolutely no possibility that this was manufactured, whether a weapon or whether just through studying the virus. Some theories are solid in it being direct from nature, and others, including a former CIA officer, have wildly different opinions. So I'm not sure if we will ever find out the truth, but it is interesting to look into each of those. The Federal Reserve is to pump in over $1 trillion in dramatic ramping up of market intervention amid the meltdown. The NHL has paused its season due to coronavirus, and we've got the statement right there if you want to read the full thing. President Donald Trump said on Thursday that it's a possibility the administration could impose travel restrictions within the United States to limit exposure to the coronavirus if certain areas get too hot. We haven't discussed that yet, Trump said when asked about the option. Is it a possibility? Yes. If somebody gets a little bit out of control, an area gets too hot. You see what they're doing in New Rochelle, which is good, frankly, Trump said. It's the right thing, but it's not enforced. It's not very strong, but people know they're being watched. New Rochelle, that's a hot spot. It's true. We have talked about that a little bit before, that New Rochelle has had the National Guard deployed there. They have said that the National Guard is not going to be involved in policing or anything like that. They are helping with the disinfecting and stuff like that. But of course, that could change at any moment. The U.S. Army Medical Research and Development Command has signed an agreement with Gilead Sciences to provide the company's investigational coronavirus drug to U.S. troops confirmed to have the virus. The medicine, given intravenously, is currently being tested for safety and effectiveness in 2 separate clinical trials in China and one by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. In the U.S. study, the first volunteer was an evacuee from the Diamond Princess cruise ship, hospitalized with the illness at the University of Nebraska Medical Center in Omaha. That potentially might not come as a surprise to some people if they know that the U.S. military has used troops many times in the past as guinea pigs for many different things. Spain may be considering a lockdown of Madrid. The president of Madrid said on Thursday that the Spanish government was considering locking down Madrid. Some quotes from an NPR article titled "Singapore Wins Praise for its COVID-19 Strategy, the US Does Not," say that hope is not a strategy. We are still very much in the upcycle of this epidemic. Our response is much, much worse than almost any other country that's been affected. And we keep hearing that over and over and over again. Amazon workers can take unlimited sick days this month, but only those who test positive for the COVID-19 virus will be entitled to any sick pay. Princess Cruises have suspended operations for the next 60 days, while Viking Cruises cancel all of their cruises due to coronavirus. I was just told recently on a phone call with my mom that Carnival Cruises have not canceled anything yet, but we do have a personal friend that decided to cancel their own trip on a Carnival cruise. So if you're scheduled for a cruise on Carnival, it might be a good idea to cancel that. Ireland is closing schools, colleges, childcare facilities. They will be closed on Friday as part of a nationwide effort to halt the spread of the coronavirus. Indoor gatherings of more than 100 people and outdoor gatherings of more than 500 people will also be canceled. A U.S. Senate staffer has tested positive for COVID-19. The staffer works with U.S. Senator Maria Cantwell, who represents Washington State. She has closed her D.C. office for the remainder of the week. Remaining staffers will work remotely, and she has asked other staffers to get tested in light of the positive results. The CDC director admits that some Americans who seemingly died of the flu had COVID-19. Now, that is something that I've been saying for a while now. We need to go back and look at everybody that was diagnosed with the flu or diagnosed with an influenza-like illness that was never specified back through this entire flu season, including all of the people that apparently died of the flu or something similar or related. Walmart says that 1.4 million hourly workers can stay home. Walmart is launching an emergency leave policy for its 1.4 million hourly U.S. workers that includes allowing its employees to not be penalized for taking time off if they feel uncomfortable working because of fear of the spreading virus. The nation's largest private employer also said Tuesday that hourly workers who work in a store, club, office, or distribution center will receive up to 2 weeks' pay if they're required to quarantine by the government or by the retailer. Workers who have a confirmed case of the new virus will also receive 2 weeks of pay. If they are not able to return to work after that time, additional pay may be provided for up to 26 weeks for both full-time and part-time hourly workers. And this next one is actually an old bit of news that we put in here after remembering that it was something some of us came across back at the end of December. A December 31st article in the South China Morning Post talked about the measures that Hong Kong was taking as a mystery pneumonia was infecting dozens of people in Wuhan. It said no human-to-human infection had been reported so far, officials said, and no medical staff had contracted the disease. Italy has suspended mortgages and household bills. Italy will boost measures to soften the economic impact of the coronavirus, such as suspending the need to pay household bills, the industry minister said on Tuesday, calling for the European Union to change its rules to allow more government spending. Asian markets continue to tumble as the pandemic continues to spread across the globe. Asian stock markets plunged for the second straight day, with benchmark indexes in Australia, Japan, the Philippines, Singapore, and Indonesia following the Dow Jones Index into bear market territory. Alan Lee, portfolio manager at Ada Capital, said the virus spread in the U.S. looks out of control. Even the NBA is suspending play. COVID-19 infections reach government ranks around the world. The novel coronavirus has begun to infect political leaders worldwide, hampering their ability to operate in a time of crisis and showing how even the highest echelons of government aren't beyond the disease's reach. Colorado's first drive-up testing facility has opened in Denver, and it is free of charge. This week it is only open from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. today and Friday, so I guess we already passed that today. Next week's schedule will be posted on the state's website. People will need to have a doctor's note saying that they meet criteria for testing. The super rich are jetting off to their disaster bunkers. Like hundreds of thousands of people across the world, the super rich are preparing to self-isolate in the face of an escalation in the coronavirus crisis. But their plans extend far beyond stocking up on hand sanitizers and TV box sets. The world's richest people are chartering private jets, set off for holiday homes or specially prepared disaster bunkers in countries that so far appear to have avoided the worst of the outbreak. Many are understood to be taking personal doctors or nurses on their flights to treat them and their families in the event that they become infected. The wealthy are also besieging doctors and private clinics in Harley Street, London, and across the world, demanding private coronavirus tests. 6 million Australians are to get immediate $750 coronavirus stimulus payments. Businesses, welfare recipients, and tourism operators will get $17.6 billion in the first stimulus measures since the global financial crisis, as the Morrison government plunges the budget back into deficit in a bid to avoid recession. Up to 6.5 million people on government benefits, including pensioners, the unemployed, and family tax benefits, will get up to $750 each in cash payments in an attempt to drive consumers back to the shops to lift confidence in the economy. Federally funded tests conducted by U.S. scientists indicate coronavirus can survive in the air. Now, we've seen previous studies and statements about this coming out of China, but now this is also coming out of the US, which is confirmation for people who have been hoping that the virus has mutated to maybe something less severe or less transmissible as it's made its way over here to the US. But it looks like the federally funded tests conducted by scientists from several major institutions indicated that the novel form of the coronavirus behind the worldwide outbreak can survive in the air for several hours. The study is awaiting peer review. It was posted online on Wednesday, and it says that the COVID-19 virus could remain visible in the air up to 3 hours, while remaining alive on plastic and other surfaces for up to 3 days. Texas's first case of community spread highlights a lack of testing. The largest public health lab in Texas is only able to conduct a maximum of 26 tests per day. A coronavirus patient was turned away from a Bolivian hospital. One of 2 people confirmed to have the coronavirus in Bolivia is being sheltered in a government office after local residents and medical staff blocked her entry to up to 4 hospitals in a provincial city. We are not going to allow this woman's entry because the hospital does not have the conditions to handle a coronavirus case, one unnamed nurse told Bolivia's main El Deber newspaper. There are a large number of patients and people who could be infected. Working from home is now mandatory for all Twitter employees. It was previously mandatory for Twitter employees to work from home in a few different countries, but now it is mandatory for all employees. Denmark has shut schools and universities, and all employees in the public sector with non-critical jobs are to be sent home starting Friday. Tom Hanks says that he and his wife have coronavirus. Actor Tom Hanks and his wife Rita Wilson announced that they have tested positive for COVID-19. They are both 63 years of age, which puts them at a much higher risk of having serious complications, and they are both currently in Australia. Last night, the NBA suspended the rest of the season until further notice after the first player tested positive. There are now 2 players that have tested positive. El Salvador has banned foreigners from entering the country for the next 21 days. Citizens that are arriving from countries where coronavirus has been declared would have to be quarantined for 30 days. And live from the White House, last night, Trump declared that all travel from Europe would be banned for the next 30 days. However, the ban does not include the United Kingdom, and that goes into effect on Friday. So travelers in Europe right now are scrambling to change their plans to get back here before that ban goes into place. And you know what? Let me show you a video of that real quick. That announcement came last night and just in the row with other major announcements too. We learned about Tom Hanks, we learned about the NBA, we learned about this ban, and I found this video on Twitter that was kind of eerie. So these are travelers that are currently in an airport last night, ready to leave the country. And obviously they need to know what just happened and potentially change their plans. So I will play this so you can hear.
That's not going to happen tonight. That's me levying common sense. That's all I can do. You know what I mean? Aer Lingus is going to probably come out with a commercial policy like most international carriers at some point in the next 24 hours. The only thing that we really can do here for you is that if you really don't want to go, listen, we're not going to make you go. We'll get your bags. We'll send you to carousel number 6. The guys will coordinate with the bag room downstairs to get your bags as quickly as possible back to you, okay? You can contact the call center or your travel agent to get either rebooked or reimbursed. Again, I would think that you'd get a refund, but up until 15 minutes ago, I thought everybody was going, you know, to Dublin tonight without any sort of impediment. I'm not going to have a commercial policy blanket for everybody. I would think you'd get a refund, but I can't say that for sure. Alrighty? But if the leader of the free world is telling you that, you know, your travel is being affected, I would think that we have to give you your money back.
Final boarding call, final boarding opportunity.
So even those of us that travel frequently have probably never encountered something like that happening at the airport. Italy has shut stores across the country to fight COVID-19. Italy announced on Wednesday that all stores except for pharmacies and food shops would be shut. A Seattle lab only uncovered Washington's outbreak after breaking government rules. This is a shocking one. I encourage you to read more about this. This links to an article in The Independent. I also saw something in The Week. Tests performed without permission from relevant authorities showed that COVID-19 had already established a foothold in the US and was spreading in the Seattle area. And I will end with this one. COVID-19 is probably 10 times more lethal than the seasonal flu, Trump's task force immunologist says. A lot of people are sharing their opinion, as well as memes and copy and pasting things that say that the flu is much worse than this coronavirus. We don't know that yet. We've had the flu around for a long time. We have data from past seasons, so we can track the flu, figure out what's going on with the flu. We know the flu. This coronavirus is very new and very different than anything that we have seen before. Whether you believe everything that's being said about it or not doesn't change the fact that we don't have a lot of data about it. We have not completed the season yet. We don't even know what the length of the season is for this thing. There are some predictions that we're not going to see the end of this until next winter. So is this season going to be a whole year long? We don't know, but we cannot compare the numbers to anything else until we get on the other side of it and we can finally look at all of the numbers. When we're testing so few people in the United States, we don't know the infection rate. There are potentially, like we said just a little bit ago going through this feed, that people who had and died from the flu during this flu season potentially also died from the coronavirus. It was 2 infections. We don't know, but there's a lot of data lacking. So it's a really huge stretch to say that the flu is more deadly or more contagious than this thing. Probably 10 times more lethal. That's a probably, because on that end too, we don't know. We have to wait until the end before we can look at the numbers and figure out what's been going on here. Before I move on to a couple of other things, I do want to refresh this though and see if we missed anything. Washington's governor has finally ordered the closure of all K-12 schools, public and private, in King, Snohomish, and Pierce counties for more than a month. A lot of people think that has been a long time coming. At Miami's public hospital, doctors and nurses are begging to do COVID-19 tests. For a week or more, healthcare workers at Jackson Hospital, or Jackson Medical Center, it doesn't say, or Jackson Health Systems, it says in the background of that image down there, have been begging the State Department of Health for clearance to run tests. A registered nurse said this. Nurses and doctors in the emergency room are on the front lines, and they're having to fight with bureaucracy to get a test. COVID-19 patients may be contagious for weeks longer than we thought, a study finds. Some people who get the coronavirus could be contagious for a lot longer than the 2-week quarantine period that many countries are using, a new study says. Researchers looking at cases in China say patients could spread the virus for up to 37 days after they start showing symptoms. Yikes. On average, survivors still had the virus in their respiratory systems for about 20 days and could presumably continue to spread the disease. The shortest observed duration of viral shedding among survivors was 8 days, whereas the longest, was 37 days. That is a long time. Apparently, the CDC tested only 77 people this week. Wow, today is Thursday, 77 people. Despite insistent promises from the Trump administration, coronavirus testing in the United States appears to be proceeding with a marked lack of urgency. An examination of state and federal records by Yahoo News finds that American states are on average testing fewer than 100 people a day, while the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had tested fewer than 100 people total in the first 2 days of the week. This is not a problem we can test our way out of, said Stephen Redd, MD, head of CDC's Office of Public Health Preparedness and Response, on Wednesday. Yikes. Okay, so I said today is Thursday, only tested 77 people. That quote was from Wednesday, so 77 people probably in the first 2 days of the week. Utah Jazz players infected by COVID-19 stayed at a Detroit hotel on Saturday. Yikes. All right, and those are the latest updates in that feed. And I just thought I would show you some of what people are encountering out in the world the past few days.
I don't think it's gonna...
I feel like dropping everything off here.
Specifically, Costco, I think, is one of the best examples of where people are going right now. And the lines are so long. This is in New York, on the Upper East Side of New York City. The line outside is massive. Everybody's just waiting to even get into the store. Here's another line outside. I don't know where this one is, but wow, that line is huge. Empty shelves being seen in Costco and all kinds of different stores. People are finding no toilet paper, no pain medications, children's medications, certain kind of vitamins, bleach, and all kinds of cleaning supplies are out. It is not the time to panic buy, but if you don't have this stuff, I can understand why you might want some of it. There are certain things we can go without. Do not panic if you cannot find toilet paper. You might have to turn to some alternatives. Here is a Costco line in Los Angeles. Wow. It's winding kind of like a snake game all through the parking lot there. That seems like might be difficult for some of those cars to get out of the parking lot. This one I thought was very important when I found it yesterday. This person named Rebecca says, I went to the grocery store this afternoon. As I was walking in, I heard a woman yell to me from her car. I walked over and found an elderly woman and her husband. She cracked her window open a bit more and explained to me, nearly in tears, that they are afraid to go into the store. They are afraid to get sick as they are in their 80s and hear that the coronavirus is affecting older people disproportionately, and they don't have family around to help. Through the crack in the window, she handed me a $100 bill and a grocery list and asked if I would be willing to buy her groceries. I bought the groceries and placed them in her trunk and gave her back the change. She told me she had been sitting in the car for nearly 45 minutes before I had arrived, waiting to ask the right person. I know it's a time of hysteria and nerves, but offer to help anyone you can. Not everyone has people to turn to. So, in my opinion, that is an excellent point and a very important story to spread. I'm sure other people are experiencing and encountering similar things, and this is not something that we should ignore right now. Elderly people especially are going to be very concerned about their health when they're paying attention to the news, and if they don't have any relatives nearby, there might not be people checking up on them and figuring out how they can help them. This is the same for immunocompromised people. This could even be the same for a single mom who has a lot of kids she's caring for and might not have a big support system where she lives. We are going to need to figure out in our individual communities how we can help each other if things get really bad where you live. And even now, as this story shows, things might not be bad in this place yet, but that fear is there. So how are we going to be able to help the people that need help? And this is the same for people who can't afford to stock up on things right now. That is a lot of people in our country, and those people are being bombarded right now with images of empty store shelves and massive lines at Costco like we were just looking at. And these people see the panic and they cannot prepare. If you know anybody like that and you have connections in your community, start figuring out how people like that are going to be helped and how maybe you can help those people right now. And if you are somebody who cannot prepare right now but you want to, please don't be concerned about reaching out and asking somebody for help to get you through this. We're all experiencing this together and nobody has experienced anything like this before. We really need to help each other. And let's take one more look at this map. Let me refresh it. Oh, no data. Great. Cool. Well, that happens sometimes, and it's always a little bit unsettling, but it always ends up coming back. It usually happens when they're updating the numbers. So if you see that the first time you check out the map, please give it some time and come back again. Hopefully it doesn't mean that the entire Center for Systems of Science and Engineering has succumbed to coronavirus and can no longer update the map. I doubt that that's it. All right, I'm gonna end it here with a good reminder to please make sure that you wash your hands. Thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe to our Telegram channel and stay on top of this news. And if you've got anybody in your community, in your neighborhood, in your family that could use some extra help, please make sure you are reaching out. Thank you, and yeah, wash your hands.